All right, some more turbo thoughts on insane abundance. So what is insane abundance? Why does it matter? Etc. So the first thought about insane abundance is like, the best way to think about life is only hyper super abundant. So for example, currently speaking, right, it's like there's a lot of things to hate about the burbs in America, but if you have Amazon and you got the Costco Business Center and you got a gym, you can do anything you want. It's like so much insane abundance, and it's like you got the iPhone, you got the internet, you got the Wi-Fi's. I'm like, bro, what else do you really need, right? And I think the way to feel insane abundance is you also need insane health. What is insane health? Insane health is getting your ass to bed at like 8:30 p.m. in the evening or 7:30 p.m. sleeping, waking up naturally without the aid of an alarm clock. I think last night we went to bed like 8:30 p.m. and then woke up naturally this morning maybe like 6:30. And a life where you're maximally just kind of out and about. So something I've also discovered, what is the best road to being miserable and unhappy is just being at home all day, or even worse, being in the office all day. I think the best life is a life with maximal dynamicness, movement. So I call it suburban island hopping, where if you're stuck in the burbs, right, the most virtuous thing you do is get your kid in the car, go to the local park, play with him for like 5-10 minutes, jump back in the car, go to the next location, use the toilet, play with him do a little touring, jump in the car, go back to the next set. So it's like urban archipelagos where each little location is its own little mini island archipelago, and you just kind of play around and have fun at it and just kind of keep going. My ultimate yeah, that'd be a quite good existence. So just think to yourself, and also pro tip on Amazon, order the called fresh roasted coffee. Get the Ethiopia Yirgacheffe light roast. It's like a fucking huge ass like 5-pound bag. For me, only like 30-40 bucks. And it's like, you know, you get those like, you know, kind of those like new wave, third wave coffee roast. You get the tiny little bag for like 20 bucks, 25 bucks. I'm like, nah, just go ahead and just get the 5-pounder. And then so in a day, if you have enough coffee, you have enough caffeine, matcha green tea powder is also a good thing. You got enough clean water, get good sleep, get some good sun, maximum UV exposure during the winter time. Got the gym, got your kid. Bro, what else do you need, right? Like, you don't need nothing else, right? Even nowadays, like, even if someone gifted me a Lambo, the intelligent thing would be to say, no thank you. Enjoy. Even if somebody gifted me a Tesla, like a brand new Plaid, whether a Model S or a Model X, would I accept it? Maybe. I don't know. Gotta get registered, gotta get the insurance, gotta figure out how to get the charging set up at the house. Kind of a PITA, pain in the butt. Okay. So yeah, and I think if you think about insane abundance, the upshot of all of this is that you could do more epic, insane innovation. And finish Jeff Bezos' Invent and Wonder book. If you already know it's going to succeed beforehand, it's not an experiment, nor is it innovation. And I don't like to think of it as a quote failure. To fail just means to fall. It's like certain things manifest the way that you want it to manifest, certain things don't. And even if things do manifest the way you wanted them to, me, it's kind of like anticlimactic. So for example, I've been working my rack pulls at the gym. A few days ago I was finally able to hit the 6 plates and 25 on each. I was at 635 pounds, and that was like my goal for a while. In the beginning I couldn't even lift it up. My grip strength or my strength wasn't strong enough, and now I could do it. I did it. I did it. And it, like, you know, I was happy about it, but it's kind of like, that's cool. But then it's like, now I gotta toss on a 2.5 on each side or a 5, go with 7 plates, then 8 plates, then 10 plates, whatever it is. And yeah, so it's kind of interesting because even whether you're successful or not, it almost doesn't matter. What I think matters more is your own personal enthusiasm, your appetite for risk, and your desire to experiment. And, you know, reading Event 1, like, man, America is so bad for so many things, but it's really the best place in the world, I think, for innovation, entrepreneurship, risk-taking. And culturally, it's not so bad when it comes to risk-taking. I mean, there, you know, a lot of Americans still don't want to look like a quote failure, but at the same time, compared to other countries, it's still we're still better off. And so the question is, can the American ethos be exported? Yes, I think it can. I think you know, even I met some dudes at Cuba, like they do CrossFit, they have a VPN, they stream Netflix, and this, once again, this is Cuba. This is my server at a restaurant. So I think to be American, actually, I don't really think of it as a nationality. I see it as like an attitude. Being an American is an attitude, right? And like, for example, Arnold Schwarzenegger, he's from Austria, not Australia, Austria, the place next to Germany, right? But he is kind of like the quintessential American bodybuilder. I mean, all modern day bodybuilding action films stems from him. We should be very grateful to him. Sylvester Stallone, I think, is Italian, which is hilarious. Just ask me that, are Italian people quote white? Initially, when they first came to America, they were kind of seen as like the Mexicans of America, where they're just like, oh, kind of like cheap laborers, whatever. Also, another thing too, when Irish people first came to America, they were also not seen as quote white. Lots of racism towards them. But then, you know, any generation that stays in America for several generations essentially becomes white. Interesting thought I had. Even if you're a really, really, really rich South Asian, Indian person, Pakistani person in America, at this point, in Silicon Valley, have a nice job, Palo Alto, buy a house, whatever, you're technically white too, which is interesting. So what does it mean to be quote white? It's not an ethnicity, nor is it even about being Caucasian. It's more about like how rich and successful you are, / how many generations your family's done been here. Like even Japanese people who've been here for like 4, 5, 6 generations, they're not technically quote Asian no more either, or Japanese. They're just American. Like even, what, his name, Robert Kiyosaki, the guy who does the Rich Dad Poor Dad, he is effectively the quintessential American, and you know, the dude's like Japanese American, right? So it's good news for all of us, right? Next time someone's gonna ask me what I am, you know, I'm like, I'm white. They're gonna look at me like, no you're not. And I'm like, yeah I am. Prove it. Right? So once again, this is why I don't like the whole racial politics, like you white, you black. Because when you call somebody black, you're not calling them African American. You're just saying that like you're poor, lower socioeconomic status, you're ignorant, use, you know, lesser than me. So as long as people call people white and black, you're essentially creating new bad forms of hierarchy, which are quite counterproductive, right? Like even if you think about Beyonce, so successful and is Beyonce even black anymore? I don't think so. She's like, you can even think of her as white, right? Like she's pop queen, right? Even Kim Kardashian, right? I don't even know what her family background is. I mean, it's some sort of ethnic. Kardashian, is that somewhere in the Middle East? Was that like Persian or something? I don't even know. But we look at Kim Kardashian like she white, right? The Kardashians, we see them as a quote white family, even though they're not Caucasian in the typical sense, right? And yeah, so I think to be American is to have audacity, courage, and love for risk taking. I think there's definitely a focus around media towards individuality, towards kind of like, I like it that in America it's like there is definitely this like cult of the individual or cult of self, which means every individual wants to become a star, and I think this is a good thing. The road is not through social media or the YouTubies or whatever, but actually through building up your own name, your own platform, like own your first name and last name. Like for example, Cindy bought me the domain name erickim.com. I own erickim.com. If you want to email me, my email is eric@erickim.com. So that looks so much more gangsta than the basic like at gmail.com. It's funny because like initially Gmail was sexy, but now it's like it's almost as basic as having like an AOL account. Like if I meet some sort of successful person, they give me their Gmail, I'm like, bro, he's not really successful. Use not entrepreneurial. I give more faith when people have an email that is at their own domain. Even better yet, their own name, right? Like even the Jeff Bezos email, right? Is what, jeff@amazon.com. Like, yo, that's gangsta. Keep it gangsta. So yeah, just own your own domain. If you can't purchase your first and last name, maybe it's not a bad idea to add a hyphen. Like my friend, I built him a website, timothy-flanagan.com. So, you know, I don't think I helped him set up his email, but a good email will be like tim@timothy.flanagan.com. And once again, it's a good branding thing where ultimate Coco brand is your name. Even the notion of branding, it's like literally like cattlemen, where they would have the brand, like the iron hot poker, and they would brand their name into their cattle to show who's the cattle belong to. So to brand something, like, so people's like, brand yourself. It's like, would you let any sort of foreign entity forcibly hot poker their brand into your butt? Probably not. Not a good idea in my book. So ultimately, no, at the end of the day, the best brand name is your first last name. Even a pro tip, like everyone wants to wear the Balenciaga shirt and Louis Vuitton. Just like go to spreadshirt.com. Why not just print out a shirt with your own first and last name on it? Like that would be the best. Like don't wear a LeBron jersey, or like, why do people not have pride in their own names? It's kind of funny, right? Or turn your first and last name into a concept. So for example, everyone's all about the LV, right? We love the LV. Does anyone even know who Louis Vuitton is? What is a Louis Vuitton, right? Or what is a like Kanye said, what is a Versace? What is a Balenciaga, right? It was a dude, right? So like hyphenate your name, right? Like Eric Kim. I don't want to be known as Eric Kim. I want to be EK. Become a concept. Like Richard Milley, right? People don't actually know Richard Milley is actually a real dude. Or Richard Mill, whatever they want to call him. Richard Milley Costa Lambo. So even this is the best thing about Kanye West, is that like, you don't have to call him Kanye West. You can say Kanye, because ain't nobody have the first name Kanye, which is super cool. Or just Ye. When people's like, you want to be known on the list, is like Ye. Also the funny thing, and this is where as much as people like hate and criticize Kanye, whatever, right? Let's say there's somebody who's being interviewed on some like hip hop, you know, show or podcast or something, right? and then they say they're associated with Kanye, sooner or later the interviewer is going to ask like, oh, so how's Ye doing? So he's influential when other people be interviewed on other interviews, and then your name or personality gets mentioned. So the ultimate route to power, at least on the internet or America, whatever, it's definitely influence. Power is influence, and it's more important than money, because once you're influential, it's pretty easy to make money. But if you have money, it's actually difficult to be influential. True tip. So a lot of people who become rich through random means, being a doctor or a dentist or whatever, and then they want to use their money to become influential, rarely ever get it. Like, even there's some people in Silicon Valley I know who, older than me, did the tech startup thing, sold it for a bunch of millions of dollars and stuff like that, and then now they want to brand themselves as some sort of influential, famous, successful person, but never get the fame or the influence, because ironically enough, money cannot buy fame. I think once you become famous, not always, but sometimes the money follows, usually. Well, it's funny too, because like in America, right, like being famous, I think, is actually more important than being rich, because like being rich is just typically a signal that the person is famous. Also, the thing too about fame, right? Fame is good. There's a caveat. It's good to be really, really famous in a super small niche, like be an Eric Kim in the realm of photography or street photography, right? And so if I go to a camera shop, typically people know who I is, right? But then if I just go to like Costco or I go to the gym, nobody knows who I am. So it's kind of nice where you're kind of like well known in some regards, so it's good for your self-esteem. But in everyday living, use anonymous and you could enjoy your privacy. Like, I would hate being a Tom Cruise or a Brad Pitt. Like, I can't even go to Whole Foods with my kid by myself to just pick up a random thing without getting mobbed, right? Or you could be like Future, right? Ski mask, cover my face up. Like, maybe it's better if you're a celebrity to walk around with a ski mask and sunglasses on, right? Then people really don't know who you is, right? But the funny thing is, the more you try to cover up, the more people try to figure out who you are. Okay. Also, funny thought. You know how rappers are really not successful? Why? I was on a plane. I ain't finna name his name because it's kind of embarrassing. I was on a Delta flight, just like coming out of Atlanta, right? And a very famous rapper comes in, Delta. I'm like, bro, if he is really a famous rapper, like, flying Delta, I'm like, don't you got a private jet? So don't trust rappers. There is no rich rapper whose cell phone. Nope. The only ones probably we could trust include Jay-Z, because he owns his name, right? Kanye, because he's made his fortune outside of money. It's funny, when people call somebody crazy, right? What does that mean? That just means they speak their mind. And they have the courage to speak their mind, essentially, right? And everyone calls like, oh, Kanye's bipolar, schizophrenic. I'm like, I think whenever people call somebody bipolar, it's like, or they try to give you some sort of diagnosis about like a certain mental condition, it could either be a sign that a person's in poor health, just physiological poor health, and then the mental health deteriorates. So for example, if you're chronically high on methamphetamines and sleeping 2 hours a night, physiologically, like physically, your body is going to be very unwell, and therefore your mind is also going to do wacky things. But I don't think anyone is like really just like born bipolar or whatever. I think it's just like when a psychologist or a psychiatrist can't figure out what you got, they just slap a thing on you, right? But anyways, so, and also I have a theory too, where like even like schizophrenia, I don't think it's actually a mental condition. I think actually there's some other physiological disease you have, or infection you have, or something, which then your mind starts to do bizarre, wacky things because your body's health is poor or deteriorating, whatever. So yeah, just when people call somebody crazy, it's just because like that person has a basic thinking and just cannot understand the nuances or subtleties of differentness. Also, another pro tip is, I think the best way to approach life is just to never like criticize or critique nobody. It's just like, if you don't care for them, just don't say anything. Because like the funny thing is, when you criticize or critique somebody, you actually give them more fame and influence. So for example, Donald Trump, the first election cycle, right? I think he got like $1 trillion worth of free advertising because liberal media would always highlight the most egregious thing he said recently on Twitter. Also, it was good. I'm sure it's good for Twitter stock. As much as Jack doesn't like it, Donald Trump saved Twitter. And then now that Elon Musk, he done saved it too. And if you really don't like something or someone, just don't mention it, or else you're giving them free press, right? Like once again, I was at the gym, right? I mentioned Kanye music, right? And they're like, dude, bro, don't you hear Kanye crazy says something like, I like Hitler or something like that. I'm like, I'm like the biggest Kanye fan that I know, and I'm just like, Eric, don't get tempted. Don't get tempted to Google it, because that's gonna take you down a very bad dark rabbit hole. It ain't worth it. A good way to think about like controversy or conspiracy theories or whatever. Okay, what did you buy out? Is, and this is where it's a good way to build your mental power, willpower, or your intelligence, is critical thinking. Just think to yourself, even if it were true, does it really matter in my own personal life? So for example, let's say the moon landings were faked. Like, let's say the moon landings were indeed faked. Like, what does that have to do with my daily life? It has absolutely nothing to do with my daily life, right? Or let's say, you know, person X said XYZ. Like, what does that have to do with my daily life? It has nothing to do with my daily life. So I think it just distracts you. The most important thing for you to do with your physiological mind and space is to write, blog, vlog, make photos, make videos, whatever you want to do. You want to create, you want to be a creator. Even the notion of working, it's supposed to actually mean to make, right? To work is not to answer emails or send emails. That's like, it's like you're like being like a slave. You're not just like you're like a electronic digital slave, right? Actually, the funny thing too, what is a consultant? This is what I discovered. A consultant is a digital or internet-based, or is essentially a scapegoat. I mean, the way I figured out consulting was, apparently consultants and banks and corporations are all in bed together, and whenever a company or corporation tries to do something super duper unsavory or risky in a foolish way, and they want to cover their butts, they hire a consultant, which is kind of low-key employed through the bank. And if said company, you know, goes under, they could blame it on the consultant or the consulting company for not having predicted about like Six Sigma event or something like that. And yeah, you just don't want to be a slave. You don't want to be a digital slave. It's a good way to think about it is, how do you know if you're free? If you could go days, weeks, months, years without even opening up your email inbox or checking your email or sending email, then you know you're free. Or if you could live without a phone, right? Like, even one of my friends, right, very successful in Silicon Valley, he's like, you know, making good money, he bought a house, whatever. It's like, he can't wake up in the morning without checking his messages to see if his boss needs something immediate from him. So even though he's successful, he don't got the freedom, and freedom is our number one priority and goal. And then the question is, what do you do once you have the freedom, right? Then once again, I think it's towards like artistic, philosophical, like even having the privilege of just going to the gym every single day, or going to the gym when you want to. I think it's a huge privilege. Like, the question is, like, once you once you got the fire, financial, once you're retired, whatever, what do you do with your life? Go to the gym. I think it's a virtuous way to spend your time. Lift weights, get swole. Write books, read books. It's funny because like people's like, reading is my passion. I love to read, right? I think one should only read 10% of their time and write 90% of the time. I think once you already all created out or written out or, you know, maxed out the gym, then maybe reading is a good way to just recharge some of your energies. But the point of life isn't just to keep reading and reading and reading. I think the point of life is to write, right? Like reading books as an inspiration to write, I think it's good. But even our best friend Nietzsche said some scholars or thinkers must read in order to think, and he thinks that's a bad thing. I would probably agree because the thoughts are not quite filtered. So if you immediately read a new book about anything and then you write about it, it's still good that you've written about it, but the thoughts haven't been distilled and filtered or digested in your mind or your stomach long enough, so it's not truthy. So I would actually say, you know, I don't know how old you are, right? But then you still have many years of life experience. Sometimes the best thing to just write about is just your own personal life experiences. Because if you write about your life experiences, nobody could falsify your life experiences because you're the one who's lived it. And it's probably the most honest way to approach things because you know yourself the best more than any other human being out there. And the reason why I don't really trust anybody is that A, people don't really know themselves. B, they might misremember. C, they might over-exaggerate or under-exaggerate. Oh, looks like gas prices are going down. Good sign for gas. The future ain't electric, it's gasoline. I was even thinking it's like, if you need a new car right now, maybe it is a good time to buy a gas guzzler. People are just trying to ditch it to buy the Tesla. It's like, you always got to go opposite. When everyone's buying the Tesla, you got to buy the V8 engine with the premium gas. That's gangsta. Get the V10 or the V-dub. Actually, the funny thing is, nowadays, really, really rich people, okay, thank you. If you go to really, really rich areas, right? The really, 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 really rich people, they don't drive electric cars. They all drive the Bentleys, the Rolls Royces, the Land Rovers. My thought is actually in the future, gasoline cars will still be around, but they'll only be reserved for the ultra rich and elite, and it's going to be a flex that like you're rich enough to actually pay for and afford gas, whereas electric is going to be the new commoners thing. It's kind of like hiking and outdoorsy stuff, like you think about RAI, right? It's so funny because hiking, mountaineering, being out, it's both the most free, cheapest thing that any poor person could do, or the most rich and elite activity where one spends like, you know, $1,000 on an Arc'teryx jacket and Gore-Tex things to go on. It's funny, like we went did a workshop in Sapa in Vietnam, the mountains. We're all wearing our Gore-Tex and stuff. You see these like scrappy ass kids just walking around in flip-flops, you know, light sweater. We're all bundled up in like 3 down jackets. Also from an entrepreneurial and innovation perspective, the best route is scrappiness.